Netflix reported that The Umbrella Academy was a huge viewership hit for them, and it is now up for Creative Arts Emmy Awards. I'm Riley Chow of Gold Derby, here with nominated production designer Mark Worthington. Now, Mark, first of all, I have to ask, I Googled it and didn't really come up with anything. Why is it called The Umbrella Academy?
Well, it's a long story, I suppose. Those who know the graphic novel know it. I mean, basically, it's kind of the origin story. Reginald Hargreaves, who for those who know, again, those who know the comic, is an alien, and he comes to Earth, and he actually takes over a business, basically that he basically selling umbrellas. So it's the first thing he does. He builds that into this whole series of things, actually. But that's kind of the origin point for his wealth, and what he builds all this money, and then he becomes a sort of scientist, world traveler, adventurer, everything else that he is. But it's all from that origin. So that's where the name comes from. And he invents a certain type of umbrella. Anyway, it's a long sort of detailed thing. Like, I don't know if you read the graphic novel at all, but it's very, very quirky in a good way. It's great. It's great.
And how did you use umbrellas as a motif in your designs?
Well, we didn't want to go crazy. I mean, we know what it is, and I mean, basically, it's like branding. He uses it as a branding tool for all of his stuff. So, I mean, in the Academy, you see there's stained glass windows that have a little umbrella motif in it that are used. Some of the technology that's used has the umbrella in it. We didn't go so far as to do umbrella shaped sets or anything too crazy or metaphoric. I tend to lean away from that kind of thing and try to use that in a more common sense way, which I think we did. So you'll see a lot of it, but again, more in the sort of Reginald Hargreaves branding himself and branding the kids. So it'll be in the uniforms and all that kind of stuff, the usual places. Yeah.
Now, going into the show, I'd seen the poster. I kind of knew it was about superheroes. What I did not expect was that there'd be, a monkey butler, a talking
Yeah.
chimpanzee.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, how did that figure into your sets? Are there any Easter eggs where, I don't know, maybe the sinks are lower so you can reach them or anything like that?
I have to say, not particularly. And here's the reason: is that Hargreaves builds the place for himself. He's really not thinking about anybody else. The kids. I mean, he's thinking about the kids to the extent that they are instruments that he's using for his own agenda, which is to do good in the world and save the world, as he says. But it doesn't mean that he's a warm person. And the same thing with Pogo. Pogo's a servant. Hargreaves, in a sense, I think there's a certain aspect of I think if you were to ask him as a person, why are people resentful of you? He'd say, well, I don't understand why they are. I've given them all these gifts. Pogo, I made into a sentient, language proficient monkey. So, why would he be resentful? That's kind of his attitude, and that spreads out through all of it. So the Academy is something he builds for his own purposes, and in a way, it's inconvenient and uncomfortable for other people. So actually, no. I mean, Pogo would have to kind of struggle along with human-sized stuff just because I don't really think Hargreaves thinks about it.
And do you refer to it as the Umbrella Academy or as like the Hargreaves Mansion? Or what do you call the main set?
Kind of both, but it's the Academy. We refer to it as the Academy. I mean, if he bought it, obviously, as a home laboratory place, repository for all of his collections, all the stuff that he is. And then when he discovered the kids are born in one day. Women are, suddenly become pregnant and give birth within hours, and there are these gifted kids, and he goes around the world essentially buying them, as many as he can find, and he gets 7, and then brings them back and trains them. So at that point it's at that point in his story when it becomes the Umbrella Academy for the kids, because he's had a history before this, fairly long history before this.
Now, I'm wondering how much of the set was kind of practical, like you could walk around in it and shoot in it, or how much of it was a whole bunch of different sets pieced together. There's this shot in the middle of the first episode where you can kind of see all the rooms, the entire mansion at once, kind of a cross section.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
Well, that was a digital comp. All of the none of those things don't actually play where they are in that digital composition, which is actually sort of fun. It's sort of there are some sort of slightly impossible things going on there, which I actually think is what's charming about it. And it's very it's very sort of Wes Anderson in a certain way. There's a version of that in the Life Aquatic and so on, which is great. So no, although I will say, I mean, the main spaces, the main big two-story hall and the entry hall and all of that are contiguous with the kids' space. You can, in fact, and there are a few shots that do that. You can travel all into those spaces if you choose to. So that basically all of the interior of the Academy is practical, but not in the arrangement you see in that one shot of the when we the I Think We're Alone Now soundtrack playing under it, which is kind of everybody's favorite moment. Everyone references that one. It's pretty great.
There's this one room where there's a whole wall of paintings, and I'm wondering how you chose those ones.
That room is interesting. It was meant to. It's actually that room is on the mezzanine of the main entry hall, and it's a little alcove, and that's for Grace, the robot mom. Interesting when you talk about this show, you're saying things like Grace, the robot mom, as if it's natural, and it is in that world. But so she sits there a lot. You see her there quite a bit, and initially that was going to be a whole other little parlor for her. And one idea that came up when we were talking about her character and how to express it, she's a really interesting character because although she's an android or a robot, she's actually the only little piece of warmth in that family unit in a way. And the kids are attached to her emotionally, which Hargreaves baked in, but ironic that she's a robot. But she never leaves the house was what we were thinking. And that the paintings on the wall, and there are landscapes, there are portraits, there's a whole range of things, are basically her window into the world because she never leaves the Academy. So her understanding of the outside world, in a certain sense, is through those paintings. So that's where she goes in a way, because that's the broader, wider world for her. And there's an interesting kind of poignancy to that as well, because she is as much a sort of a cog or a tool within Hargreaves' toolbox as the kids are. And they all sort of have that, somewhat cobbled or difficult relationship with Hargreaves. So anyway, that's what that was all about.
Now you're nominated at the Emmys in the Contemporary Production Design category.
Yeah.
I'm wondering why submit there as opposed to fantasy?
To ask Netflix. I mean, they're the ones who submit, seriously. They're the ones who make those decisions ultimately. In this case, because they submitted for the studio, I can submit on my own if I choose to. That's a whole other topic, because some studios really don't give you much support. I'm not going to say which ones, but you end up on your own. You submit, you pay the fees, you do the whole thing, right? Netflix is great, very supportive. I don't know. I mean, I think it kind of sits in between in a weird way, doesn't it? I mean, I guess it's kind of alternate timeline, but it's more or less contemporary. Although we have the kind of the beautiful, Academy and so forth. That's all stuff that exists in a contemporary, setting. A lot of what we see, as we go out into the world is contemporary. Some of it's not. I mean, we have the whole, we've got aspects which are very kind of sci-fi, if you will. So I don't know. I mean, it's hard. One of the things that's fun about this story is it's really hard to categorize. What is it exactly? So who knows? They may have thrown a dart against the wall for all I know, or maybe they're, for however they make that decision. But I think you can make a valid argument on either side of that to say, oh no, this is fantasy. No, this is contemporary. I mean, other shows in our category sort of, walk that same line too, where it's like, is this near future? It's alternate timeline. I mean, what is it? And I think that's good. I love the fact that the sort of the time-honored assumptions about what a story is in terms of genre are breaking down, and it's getting harder to categorize. I think that indicates a health in storytelling right now, is that people are doing new things. They're all kinds of new material, new ways of thinking about stories, and revamping old notions of stories, so that we find ourselves in a place where we are scratching our head a little bit. I mean, what is this thing? I like that. It's exciting.
Yeah, you're on your 8th Emmy nomination now. You've been through kind of many incarnations of the breakdown of the production design categories. They're called art direction, then they're split by movies and miniseries, and then fantasy and contemporary were lumped together. How do you feel about the current setup?
I don't know. You always have misgivings with it. Think, well, does it really accurately reflect what we do? I mean, the Emmys have something like, the Creative Arts Emmys have something like 70 some categories. So I sympathize with the Emmys in terms of, like, from our perspective, we say, well, we need more categories to really sort of accurately describe what it is people are doing. But then you realize the sort of Herculean task they have in terms of the sheer numbers, which are greater, I think, than any. I don't know for sure, but it seems like there's far more categories than in any other awards that exist. So I sympathize. It's kind of all or nothing. I mean, in the Academy Awards, there is one category, which is problematic, I think, if you want to look at there. I think the Emmys do a better job of saying, we understand the story differences, and they're starting to, and they're grappling with it. So yes, do I wish that it were a little more granular and it really reflected more of what we do? Sure. We're in such a dynamic time, it's really hard to keep up. So, I'm kind of on the fence about that. Again, I sympathize with him, but of course, I think it could be a little more accurate. But then again, everything changes every 2 years. So, I mean, what do you do? There are those, I can't complain, that's a first world problem. Hey, I'm nominated for an Emmy, right? I've been nominated 8 times. I'm kind of the Susan Lucci of production designers at this point. Susan Lucci, who that may be a reference you don't know. I don't know.
It comes up a lot on Golden.
Yeah, she's amazing. She really is kind of amazing. I love her. She was on all much. Anyway, it's just a joke. People have been calling me that for years since I've been nominated so many times, but without actually getting the gold. So who knows? Fingers crossed.
My last question, you started in film, you came over to television 15 years ago with Lost. You've done so many shows, different seasons of American Horror Story that are span many genres.
Yeah.
Why did the Umbrella Academy feel that you would be right for their production design?
Horror Story is a great calling card because it's a career's worth of production design in one series. So we did kind of contemporary haunted house in LA. And then we did, I think, 5 periods within that one season. And then we move on to Asylum, designed and built the whole interior of the Asylum, built it at Paramount. That's amazing. It's 1963. So, or no, 1960. Sorry, on that one. I just did it in 63. But anyway, it's a period, really interesting world. And then there's what was it, Coven? So now we're down, contemporary, but we're in New Orleans. So we're building this beautiful antebellum Garden District house and all this stuff. Anyway, Freak Show's a circus. Hotel was a full-on Art Deco hotel that we designed and built from the ground up on stages at Fox. So all of that stuff, I mean, you bring that in, and people are like, "Oh, okay." I'm very lucky to have had a extremely varied career. Lost was action, basically an action film. Ugly Betty, sort of high style, but very stylized, but real at the same time. So you have all that in a book, and you bring it in. Some people tend to stay, and I think this industry tends to pigeonhole people. I'm sure you hear that a lot. And it's not untrue. You get in a certain groove, and you keep doing the same kind of thing because people see that in your work, and they say, "Hey, I want that thing," and they hire you for it. That all makes sense. I have tried somewhat, with varying degrees of success, not to do that. Try to pick projects that give me a variety of design challenges. I just find that more interesting. I've been very lucky to, both consciously and just through sheer luck, have that happen. So I think when people look at the book, they're like, "Oh, you can do stuff." So I think that's what Steve is responding to. And I think, you know, you have a conversation with people. A lot of it just has to do with that chemistry. You know, you want to, you know, you hit it off with someone or something clicks. It's a lot of it is just that too, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with these people. So you want to, you know, you want to have a good relationship, and they want to understand that you're going to get what they're asking for. So it's a lot of things go into that.
All right. Well, to our viewers, if you enjoyed this interview, we have others on our channel. You can make your predictions for the Emmys on our website. And Mark, thanks very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to chat.
You're very welcome. Take care.